My name is Valerie. I'm 44, and the last my kin heard of me, I'd supposedly spiraled out of a community college program, tangled in a fabricated drug dependency used to rationalize my abrupt disappearance. The profound irony was not lost on me as I settled the concealed body armor beneath my suit jacket in the underground parking garage of the Los Angeles Federal District Court. 25 years of deliberate estrangement, and now I stood on the precipice of initiating the most extensive federal racketeering prosecution in California's history, an action that would utterly dismantle the edifice my family had constructed on artifice, coercion, and the systematic exploitation of migrant laborers through their ostensibly legitimate construction enterprise. For 3 years, I had meticulously tracked the operations of the Morgan family. Not out of any personal vendetta against them as Morgans, for that was merely an unfortunate genetic lottery, but because they had been actively funneling illicit funds for the Sinaloa cartel. Simultaneously, they leveraged undocumented workers as disposable resources, wielding the threat of deportation when these individuals dared to request basic safety gear or equitable wages. 21 souls had perished in wholly preventable industrial mishaps. 21 families shattered. Also, my relative, Thomas, could acquire yet another extravagant vessel. The fading light of dusk filtered through the high windows of the federal building as I meticulously reviewed the comprehensive case files one final time. Tomorrow, I was slated to deliver testimony as the primary federal agent on Operation Lifeline, the 3-year deep cover investigation that had finally brought down the Morgan Construction Syndicate. Tomorrow, my kin would discover that the presumed college dropout with a substance abuse issue had been operating under layers of clandestine identities for the better part of 2 decades, diligently pursuing cases ranging from human trafficking rings to international terror cells. But tonight, I was simply Val, the alleged disappointment, the one incapable of handling true responsibility. 25 years prior. Valerie just isn't suited for this sort of pressure, my relative Thomas had declared, his resonant voice carrying across the polished mahogany of the family study, where I sat hunched over my legal codes and investigative theory texts. I was 21, juggling 2 part-time jobs to finance my community college tuition, subsisting on 4 hours of sleep nightly, yet still maintaining a 3.8 GPA. She's too tender, too empathetic. Look at her. She can barely keep her eyes open. My mother offered a silent nod, unobtrusively sliding another substantial check across the heavy desk to my cousin, Maxwell, who had just failed out of his 2nd university but somehow remained the family's undisputed golden child. Maxwell possesses that innate leadership quality. That's precisely what's required in law enforcement. I had submitted applications to every federal program I could locate: the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the U.S. Marshal Service. Each application was a closely guarded secret I kept from family dinners, where they endlessly speculated whether I would endure another academic semester or if I should simply find a respectable young man and settle into domestic life. Maxwell reclined in his leather chair, a cold ale already in hand at 6 in the evening. Besides, Val has that whole bleeding heart disposition, always tearing up over some tragic tale. You can't be effective if you're overly concerned about upsetting people's feelings. Precisely, Thomas concurred. This family has a reputation to uphold. We don't need, he gestured vaguely in my direction. We don't need fragility associated with our name. The fragility he referenced was my persistent inquiries into why their construction sites reported such unusually high injury rates, why workers invariably vanished following accidents, why the financial ledgers never quite reconciled when I assisted with rudimentary accounting during summer breaks. The fragility was my genuine concern that human beings were being harmed. I ceased my inquiries after Thomas subtly drew me aside and, with unsettling gentleness, explained that my college tuition funds could evaporate just as readily as they had materialized. Family enterprises demand family loyalty, Valerie. You grasp that, don't you? I grasped it perfectly. I also understood that every federal academy to which I had applied had placed me on a wait list, pending character references. References I could not provide without irrevocably compromising my own nascent investigation, which had already begun within those very accounting ledgers. So, I vanished instead. 2 years later, the U.S. Marshals Training Academy in Glencoe, Georgia, proved to be everything my family believed I was too frail to endure. 6 months of rigorous tactical drills, advanced firearms proficiency, intricate legal procedure, and intensive psychological evaluation. I graduated second in my class. My family believed I was in a rehabilitation facility. I allowed them that delusion. Allowed them to disseminate tales of my supposed drug problem and mental collapse. Allowed them to shake their heads sorrowfully when acquaintances inquired about Thomas Morgan's niece, the one who couldn't get her life together. It was simpler than explaining why I couldn't establish contact, why I had needed to utterly efface myself from their world to accomplish what needed to be done. The profound truth was, I had been deliberately recruited because of my familial connections. Not in spite of them, but due to them. The Marshal Service had been tracking Morgan Construction for years, observing the chilling pattern of workplace fatalities, the suspicious financial transfers, the way laborers disappeared after attempting to file injury claims. They required an operative on the inside, someone with inherent access, someone the family would implicitly trust, someone they would dismiss as too innocuous to pose any threat. Present-day federal court steps. The grand courthouse entrance swarmed with journalists and federal personnel as I completed my final preparations. In a matter of hours, the largest RICO prosecution in the district's history would commence, and I would take the stand as the pivotal witness against my own blood. Special Agent Ramirez, my FBI liaison, approached, holding a tablet displaying live news coverage. Marshal Maxwell, the family's legal team, is already framing this as prosecutorial overreach. They're claiming complete ignorance of any criminal activity. I was unsurprised. The Morgan family had meticulously cultivated their reputation on a foundation of plausible deniability and strategic blindness. What of the workers we relocated? I inquired, my voice steady. Secure. All 21 families have been moved to protective housing, with their legal status applications being expedited. The children are enrolled in schools. They will be fine. That was the paramount concern. 21 families, some who had been too terrified to utter a word for years, finally had sanctuary and a genuine opportunity for legal residency. Their collective testimony would unequivocally corroborate the extensive financial evidence I had painstakingly amassed during 3 years of attending family dinners, holiday celebrations, and business meetings, all while wearing a wire. Marshal Ramirez looked genuinely concerned. Are you truly prepared for this? I know testifying against your own family is. They ceased being my family the instant I discovered they were running a betting pool on which worker would perish next. I interjected, my voice devoid of emotion. It was the stark truth. I had discovered the betting slips inside Thomas's office safe. Actual wagers on workplace fatalities, treated with the chilling banality of an office lottery. The mere memory still caused my hands to tremble with a silent, furious indignation. The following morning, courtroom. The federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles was filled to capacity. Media representatives, federal agents, an array of defense attorneys, and in the rear rows, my family, every single one of them. I had not laid eyes on them in 25 years. Relative Thomas had aged poorly. Too many lavish meals and too much unspoken stress, likely from overseeing a criminal enterprise. Maxwell appeared exactly the same, an unnerving boyish charm still clinging to him, which somehow made it worse. My mother sat positioned between them, wearing the identical expression of disapproving concern she had mastered during my adolescence. They did not recognize me. 2 decades of specialized tactical training had altered far more than just my posture. I was 44 years old, clad in a perfectly tailored federal uniform emblazoned with insignia they couldn't decipher from the back of the courtroom. My hair was longer, neatly secured in a practical braid, my shoulders broader from years of rigorous physical conditioning. My face bore a hardened quality from witnessing atrocities they could not fathom. But primarily, I was invisible to them because they had never truly seen me in the first place. The prosecution calls Deputy U.S. Marshal Valerie Eleanor Maxwell to the stand. The resultant silence was instantaneous and absolute. I rose, my marshal's badge clearly visible on my belt, my service weapon securely holstered, my 23 years of federal service plainly evident in every aspect of my bearing. The bailiff administered the oath while my family stared in collective, stunned silence. Marshal Maxwell, the prosecutor began, please state your current position and length of service. I am a Deputy U.S. Marshal with the Los Angeles District, presently assigned to the Fugitive Apprehension Task Force. I have served with the U.S. Marshal Service for 23 years. Prior to that, I completed 2 years with the DEA's Undercover Operations Division. Behind me, someone audibly gasped. Likely my mother. And what is your relationship to the defendants? Anthony Thomas Morgan is my maternal relative. Maxwell Miller is my cousin. The Morgan Construction Company is my family's business, or was, until this investigation commenced. Marshal Maxwell, please explain to the court how this investigation began. I turned slightly, just enough to catch my family's faces in my peripheral vision. Relative Thomas had gone utterly pale. Maxwell was frantically whispering to their attorney. My mother appeared on the verge of collapsing. 3 years ago, I was approached by a joint federal task force investigating workplace fatalities and human trafficking within the construction industry. They required an agent with innate access to Morgan Construction's internal operations. Someone the family would instinctively trust. Someone they would never, ever suspect. And why would they never suspect you? Because they believed I was a drug addict who dropped out of community college 25 years ago. A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. In the back, I distinctly heard my mother emit a choked sound. Marshal Maxwell, during those 25 years, what was your actual career progression? I recited my service record like a military citation, which, in many respects, it was. 2 years DEA undercover, 23 years U.S. Marshal Service. Specialized training in human trafficking, complex financial crimes, and organized crime. Commendations for successful operations across 3 states. Current assignment as lead deputy on the West Coast Fugitive Task Force. And during this time, did you maintain contact with your family? No contact whatsoever. My assignment necessitated complete separation to maintain operational security. What did your family believe happened to you? They were informed I'd experienced a mental breakdown related to substance abuse and was undergoing long-term rehabilitation. They were actively discouraged from attempting to contact me. It was brutal testimony, systematically laying bare 25 years of deliberate falsehoods and relentless investigation, but it was also utterly indispensable. Every meticulous detail of their financial misdeeds, every incriminating recorded conversation, every harrowing witness account of worker intimidation and egregious safety violations, all of it flowed seamlessly through my testimony, like water through a breached dam. The defense attorney was a predator in a tailored suit, but he had no leverage. How does one effectively cross-examine someone who spent 3 years meticulously documenting crimes with federally authorized surveillance equipment? Marshal Maxwell, he attempted, his voice dripping with insinuation. Isn't it true that you've harbored deep-seated resentment against your family for years? That this investigation is, in essence, about personal revenge? I met his gaze steadily. Sir, I have dedicated 25 years of my life to protecting individuals precisely like the workers your clients callously extinguished. Revenge would have been considerably simpler and involved far less paperwork. The courtroom, despite itself, offered a ripple of suppressed laughter. No further questions. After testimony, courthouse hallway. They were waiting for me directly outside the courtroom doors. All of them. My mother reached me first, her face streaked with tears. Val, I don't comprehend. You propagated the lie that I was a drug addict, I said quietly, my voice devoid of emotion. For 25 years. You allowed them to believe I was frail, worthless, a stain on the family name. We thought, we were told, she stammered, reaching for me as if I were still 21 and might require comfort. I stepped back, not with harshness, but with definitive resolve. Relative Thomas pushed forward, his face suffused with fury. You annihilated us, your own family. We nurtured you. You murdered 21 human beings, I countered, my voice cutting through his rage. You menaced families with deportation if they dared report safety violations. You orchestrated betting pools on which worker would perish next. He fell silent, his face paling further. Maxwell was next, still attempting to find an angle. Val, come on. Family is family. We can resolve this. Deputy U.S. Marshal Maxwell. I corrected, my gaze unwavering. And no, we cannot resolve this. You are currently under federal indictment for racketeering, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. But you're our family, my mother wept, her voice breaking. No, I stated, and my voice carried the indisputable authority of 2 decades of federal service. I am a law enforcement officer. You are criminals. The family relationship dissolved the moment you chose to profit from people's deaths. My mother was still openly weeping, still reaching for some imagined version of the broken girl they had invented to explain my absence. But we loved you. We've always loved you. You loved the idea of me as a failure, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It made you feel more comfortable about your own choices. The real me, the one who spent 25 years safeguarding the very people you were eradicating, you never desired to know her. I turned to depart, then paused. For what it's worth, you were correct about one thing. I was far too soft for your brand of work. I could never have lived with 21 people's blood on my hands. 6 months later, the sentences handed down were precisely what the bereaved families deserved. Thomas received 25 years to life. Maxwell received 15 years. The construction company was fully liquidated, with all proceeds allocated to victim compensation. The 21 families I had helped relocate sent me a single card on the anniversary of the arrests. Their children were flourishing in school. The adults had secured legitimate employment with companies that genuinely valued their lives and well-being. I never again saw my biological family. They dispatched letters from prison. Thomas's were replete with indignation. Maxwell's with self-pity. My mother's with profound guilt and regret. I did not respond. Some betrayals are too fundamental to ever truly forgive. Not because of the specific actions taken, but because of what those actions irrefutably reveal about who people truly are when they believe no one is observing. I had spent 25 years observing. The true victory was not merely the convictions or the sentences. It wasn't even solely the justice secured for the families who had lost everything to my family's avarice. The real victory was walking out of that courthouse as precisely who I had always been. Someone who protected others instead of exploiting them. Someone who embraced the more arduous path because it was unequivocally the righteous path. Someone who would rather be underestimated and highly effective than respected and complicit. My family had spent 25 years asserting that I wasn't robust enough for their world. They were absolutely correct. I was robust enough for something far, far more.